back, ladies and gentlemen, to the She Knows Pro Football podcast. Once again, I'm Alice, aka the NFL Girl. And once again, I have my good friend Dominick here with me from Fantasy Hot Read. Dominick, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good. Getting excited to see the Super Bowl. It should be a good one. Unlike last year, we should have some scoring in this one.
Hey, hopefully we have two better high-flying, high-scoring, good defensive teams. So this hopefully will be a much better Super Bowl. Let's hope. Well, you guys, it's Super Bowl week. It's time. It is time. It is finally here, you guys. So, of course, that's going to be our first topic for this evening. So, ready for Super Bowl, you guys? We got the 15-3 San Francisco 49ers facing the 14-4 Kansas City Chiefs. Dominick, who you got?
Yeah, obviously this is the second most important game of the year behind the Pro Bowl. So it's, great that it's coming the week after the Pro Bowl. We have this one in Miami. It's probably going to be pretty warm down there, probably in the 80s. It's outdoors, which I think is actually going to help the Chiefs a little bit. I know they both play outdoors, but I think that the San Francisco 49ers, wanting to run the ball, if they run it 40 or 50 times like they probably plan to, I think it's going to they're going to get worn down, especially if Tevin Coleman misses the game, which it looks like he might. Raheem Mostert may get worn down. They're going to have to use Breida a lot more. Yes, it could wear down the Chiefs defense as well, but I just don't think it's going to have as much of an effect on them as because they probably go against the Chiefs offense all the time in practice. So they're going to be able to hopefully keep up with the stamina and everything. That being said, I really like Andy Reid. I've liked him as a coach since he was coach of the Eagles. In 98, he became coach there. And I would really love to see him become a Super Bowl winner. I just think, he's a great guy. I know he's had a lot of tragedy in his life and everything, but he's a great guy overall, even though he's not with the Eagles anymore. I'll have to say he's probably the best coach that has not won a Super Bowl. And I do think that's going to change this week, and I want it to change this week, so I'm going to go with my head and my heart here, and I think the Chiefs are going to win.
Chiefs are from that AFC West division, so me as a Broncos fan, this is very hard for me. But I actually like the Chiefs. I really do, and I particularly like Patrick Mahomes. And I like what they were able to do with their running game. Keep in mind, when Kareem Hunt was dismissed last year from the team, there was a feeling that running game would never recover. And again, and admittedly, last year there was some fall off in their run production. This year they were able to turn that around. I put some of that on Eric Bieniemy and what he's been able to do in that passing and in that running game, and what he's been able to accomplish with Damian Williams, even when Shady McCoy hasn't been up to full speed. It's awesome to see that, and I love seeing them perform as well as they do. Tyreek Hill is a monster. He can outrun pretty much anybody. That's why he goes by Cheetah. And this is a really good, solid offense. And in over the last several weeks of the season and so far in the playoffs, we have seen that defense really, really step up and really impress. It was clear that at the beginning of the season that they were going to have to flat out outscore you because that defense was going to be trash and not be able to stop anyone. And it was going to be, if they got this far, it was going to have to be a shootout in order for them to win. That no longer is the case. That defense has shown the ability to step up and play the way that they needed to play in order to propel them into the playoffs and into the Super Bowl. It is going to be a damn good match. That being said, I really like this 49ers team. I like Jimmy Garoppolo. Again, we keep saying over and over again, I really like the relationship he has in particular with Emmanuel Sanders. I'm so happy for Emmanuel Sanders to have landed there and to get the opportunity to play for another Super Bowl ring. I hope that he accomplishes that because he deserves it. Coming over from how poorly the Broncos were playing this season and getting this opportunity is so great. He has a really, really great connection with Jimmy G. But the main thing that has been taken off for them, especially through these playoffs, is that running game for them. And surprisingly, it's mainly been Mostert more than it's been on Breida. And I like seeing that. I love seeing this team and what they could do. That defense, though, my goodness, what an impressive defense they had. Nick Bosa most likely is going to run away with the Defensive Rookie of the Year, and he will have well deserved that, in particular if this team wins the Super Bowl. This is not going to be a blowout type Super Bowl. This isn't going to be one of those ones where it's like 43-8 or something where it's going to be ridiculous. These two teams can both score at will, and these two teams have really, really great defenses. I think it's going to start a little slow because the defenses are going to really be filling each other out. These teams are really going to fill each other out to start with. But once it gets going, it's really going to be, I expect a high scoring game because of who these two teams are and the way that they play and the way that they can run and pass the ball. I expect the Chiefs to pass the ball more because Mahomes has better receivers. I expect the 49ers to run the ball more because they have a better running game. That's just my feeling on the situation. At the end of the day, my feeling is the 49ers are going to be the ones that come out the victor, and it's going to be on that defense more than anything. I do think Jimmy G is going to be the Super Bowl MVP because they always give it to the damn quarterback, but it's going to be someone like Richard Sherman or even Nick Bosa that's going to be the star of the game, because it's going to be something at the end of the game that's going to be what wins the game, like some interception at the end of the game, or something to that effect or a sack within 5 yards, something to the effect that is going to be stand out in your mind. But at the end of the day, like I said, it's definitely going to be the 49ers in my mind that's going to win it at the end of the day, and I expect Jimmy G to win the Super Bowl MVP in that game.
And what did you say they called Tyreek Hill?
Cheetah.
Oh, I thought that's what they called the Patriots in Boston. I'm sorry. But yeah, and I'll say two things here. One, I think that I think there's a good chance the 49ers do win it. I know I picked the Chiefs, but I'm going to say if the 49ers do win it, I think that Raheem Mostert's going to be the MVP because Jimmy G's only thrown 28 passes in the last 5 weeks total. Not 5 games, but just 5 weeks total between the 2 games and the bye week and everything. He's only thrown 28 passes in the last 5 weeks. And the other thing is, what do you think of, which I actually really like this, and I think more people should do it, but what do you think of LaShawn McCoy coming out at Media Day and saying that he will retire as an Eagle no matter what?
Oh, I thought that was very interesting. I know that he feels a certain love for the city of Philly. I know that he has such an affinity there. I feel like that would be good for him. Now, here's the thing. Does Philly want him to come back there and play for them? Does Doug Peterson want him there? He wasn't traded by Peterson. He was traded by Chip Kelly when he was there with the Eagles. So would Doug Peterson welcome him back? There's a possibility of that. In particular, we have to keep in mind that they're going to be losing Darren Sproles, who said that he was only going to do one more season, which was this past season. It's most likely that he is going to retire this time. So it is a possibility for Shady to go back there and play in Philly. And like I said, I know he really loves that city, and I know the city still has love for him. He didn't leave there on bad terms. So I would like to see that. I would love to see him be able to continue and flourish there in Philly and help Carson Wentz possibly get back into the playoffs and go a little further in the playoffs than they did this past season.
Yeah, my thing with that, too, is I don't even know if he'll go back there and play. I just think it might be like a Jerry Rice thing where he just signs there for like 1 day just so he can retire as an Eagle.
And that's probably what he's thinking, and that would be good. But I would like to see him do what Darren Sproles did and just do a season, and then retire after, just doing one more season. But we'll see what he decides to do. I know for sure if he wins it, if the Chiefs win on Sunday, that he may do just that, do that, like you said, a 1-day contract so that he can retire an Eagle. Speaking of retirements, you guys, one big one did come down in the last week, and that is the retirement of longtime New York Giant Eli Manning. Now, with his retirement comes the inevitable question when it comes to a quarterback that had played that long in the league, and in particular with one team over that extended period of time. And that question is Eli Manning a Hall of Famer? Dominic, is Eli Manning a Hall of Famer?
Well, I'm going to answer this question 2 ways. Is he going to get into the Hall of Fame? Yes, he is. He's got the name of Eli Manning, or of Manning, period. He's got 2 Super Bowls, which I know everybody says Super Bowls don't matter, but they do. He's got not a winning record, but at least he's even with 117 and 117. He was an Iron Man, would have been even more of an Iron Man if he hadn't sat out with the Giants game with Ben McAdoo there. So and like I said, he does have the 2 Super Bowls that both of them were against the Patriots. He was always incredible in the playoffs, and he does have those stats. So yes, he's going to get into the Hall of Fame. Do I think he should get in the Hall of Fame? No. He was a good quarterback. He was never a very good or even a great quarterback. He was never in the top 5 in the league in anything. He was barely ever in the top 10. He threw way too many interceptions. And in my mind, I don't like the way any sport does. Like in the NFL, you have to have 4 players get in every year. You shouldn't have to have that. In baseball, you can get up to 10 players. In basketball, you can get this. In my mind, in all sports, not just football, but in all sports, the Hall of Fame has become the Hall of Very Good. And it's not even really to me, it's like, wow, this person got in. It's like, why? And to me, they're diluting it down so much because they want to get people in it every year that it's becoming less and less of an honor every year, every class that goes in.
You know what? I 100% agree with you on this. Eli Manning is going into the Hall of Fame. He's going into the Hall of Fame because he won 2 Super Bowls. And let's keep in mind, he won 2 Super Bowls against the greatest quarterback of his era. Keep in mind, we cannot grade quarterbacks over, or you're not supposed to grade quarterbacks over eras. Like, he has numbers that are better than, say, Fran Tarkenton, or numbers better than like Dan Fouts and stuff like that. And those are Hall of Famers. Here's the difference, though, and this is why I tell people you cannot compare quarterbacks over eras. You know, those are run first eras. You can't compare the numbers of a Dan Fouts or a Fran Tarkenton, or where the passing game wasn't the main feature. And so if you compare it to quarterbacks of his era, which include his brother, which includes Drew Brees, which includes Tom Brady, he's absolutely not a Hall of Fame quarterback. He just isn't. He finishes with a 500 record, 117 and 117 over his entire career. Admittedly, he threw for over 50,000 yards, but yeah, of course he did. He played 16 years. I hoped he would throw for over 50,000 yards, 53 to be exact. The thing that will propel him in is Super Bowls, and more specifically, the fact that he beat the greatest quarterback of his era, which is Tom Brady, in both of those Super Bowls. That is what will eventually be the deciding factor to me that people will look at. Well, yeah, he only had a mediocre record. He was only a so-so quarterback. He did throw a lot of interceptions. He did eventually get benched. All of those things have to be taken into consideration. But at the end of the day, the people that are going to vote for him are going to be like, yes. However, he won 2 Super Bowls. He was a 4-time Pro Bowler, Walter Payton Man of the Year, Bart Starr Award winner. The main thing is definitely going to be the fact that he was able to beat Tom Brady not once, but twice. And that's what's going to propel him in. I just don't think that that's a good enough reason for someone to get into the Hall of Fame. You shouldn't just have to be good enough. You should have to be one of the best of your era. And he isn't. He clearly isn't. Peyton is absolutely a first ballot Hall of Famer. Look at the numbers he was able to produce. Drew Brees, when he retires, should be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Look at the numbers he was able to produce. Same thing with Tom Brady. If you're coming up in that same era with those same level of quarterbacks, and you don't have those same type of numbers, I do not feel like you should be considered for the Hall. Well, you could be considered. You could be a finalist, but I absolutely do not think you should get into the Hall of Fame. This is going to be the same argument whether Phillip Rivers retires this year or sticks around for another 2 years. Is Phillip Rivers a Hall of Famer? Well, he was able to pass for this amount of yards, and he was able to do this, and he was able to do this. The argument against him is going to be, okay, well, he never won a Super Bowl. So what? It wasn't just the fact he didn't win Super Bowls. It's also the fact that he was a mediocre quarterback in an era of some really, really phenomenal great quarterbacks. Comparing the two, I know seems unfair considering that Eli at least has Super Bowls and Phillip Rivers does not. I don't care. It's the fact that to me, they had the same level of mediocrity as far as their skill levels, and I don't think that either one of them deserved the Hall of Fame. That's just how I feel. But is he going to actually get the vote and get into the Hall of Fame? Absolutely. And I guess that's all that matters at the end of the day.
Yeah, and Eli, obviously, he's like a media darling as well, so that's going to help him, where Phillip Rivers sometimes has some tantrums and stuff. And honestly, I think Phillip Rivers has had a better career than Eli Manning, even though he doesn't have the Super Bowls. And I would actually put Phillip Rivers in the Hall of Fame before I put Eli Manning in there. And like, if you put Eli Manning back in, say, the 70s with Terry Bradshaw, in that era, he has similar numbers to what they have, other than the yardage is more. But Terry Bradshaw and the guys back then, the players were getting mugged, for the cornerbacks. They were like tackling the wide receivers and stuff. That's why it was always impressive when they saw that you had like a 52% completion rate. Nowadays, if you have a 52% completion rate, you're getting benched. It went up through then. Like, even in the mid 80s to the early 90s to the mid 90s, some of the best quarterbacks of all time, John Elway, he won the 2 Super Bowls and he obviously got in first ballot. But can you imagine if he was, say, drafted in the year 2000, it was just retiring now, what kind of numbers Dan Marino would have put up in this NFL compared to when he played?
Exactly.
He would have more, in my opinion, he would have more touchdowns than Tom Brady, or Peyton Manning. He would have more yardage than Drew Brees, and he probably would have a Super Bowl or 2.
Everything you're saying, I 1000% agree with you on. It's again, that's why I always say you cannot compare quarterbacks over eras. You have to compare them in the era in which they played. Dan Marino, if he had gotten the opportunity to play in a pass first era like what we've had now, he absolutely probably would have won not just a Super Bowl, but possibly multiple Super Bowls, because they would have brought in receivers and they would have given him a decent running game, so he could be able to produce those kind of numbers. I don't feel like Eli, even even when he's had great receivers there, even when he's had a good running game there, ever was really that phenomenal. Again, I admit that he did win 2 Super Bowls, but he never had spectacular numbers. A lot of the reasons why he won more had to do with his defense than it had in a decent running game than it had to do with him and what he was capable of doing. But I get it. And like I said, he was a Super Bowl MVP for both of those Super Bowls. You know, he won those 2 Super Bowls. They're going to vote him in. But even as you said, if I had the choice between him and Phillip Rivers, both of them, if Rivers decides to retire today and I had to vote between the two of them, who I thought had a more spectacular career with less weapons, I would 1000% vote Phillip Rivers in over Eli. And that's speaking as a Denver Broncos fan. Did not like, Phillip Rivers as a Chargers, but he still had great numbers and he did the best he could considering that he didn't have the best of weapons there.
Now, I know he's not a quarterback, but just for curiosity, if he never plays another down in the NFL, which is quite possible, especially if he ends up in prison for life, do you think Antonio Brown is a Hall of Famer right now?
Absolutely not. I think he has great numbers. He has impressive numbers, but you have to consider the type of numbers you have to have in order to get into the Hall of Fame when you have a shortened career, for whatever your career is shortened. Let's look at 2 prime examples of people that had short careers and still made it into the Hall of Fame. We have to go back to 2 people that I can think of off the top of my head, and both of them are running backs. We have Gale Sayers, who only had a 5-year career, and we had Terrell Davis, who I believe only had like a 6-year, maybe a 7-year career in the NFL. Their numbers, in order for them to get in, were spectacular, were phenomenal. Gale Sayers ran for 6 touchdowns in one game. Like, I'm talking like damn impressive. The fact that he's able to run for over, I want to say 12 touchdowns in a 12-season game. Like, the things that he did in his little short 5-year career, you had no choice but to vote that man into the Hall of Fame, because you had to picture what could this man have done had his career lasted longer. Same thing with Terrell Davis. Both of them they blew out their knees and that was the end of their career. But in the short span that you saw what they were able to do, you were like, damn, Terrell Davis came in and won 2 Super Bowls, ran for over 2,000 yards in the season. Like, his numbers kept getting more and more impressive every year, even though he blew out his knee. And then that's when everything fell off and eventually he had to retire. Saying all that, bringing it forward to where AB is. Yes, AB has been a Pro Bowler. He's been receiving yards leader. He's been receiving touchdowns leader. He's done some very impressive things with his career, but I don't feel like he's had that spectacular of a career where he deserves Hall of Fame consideration. Simply because I don't think that his numbers were so spectacular in such a short span that you were able to see that this was probably the greatest receiver ever. Again, you have to consider eras who was in the NFL at the same time he was. So you got to look at Michael Thomas. You got to look at Mike Evans. You got to look at Deshaun Jackson. You got to look at other receivers that were in there at around the same time that AB has been in there. And Michael Thomas, to me, has had more impressive numbers as far as like yardage is concerned. Maybe AB beat him as far as receiving touchdowns, but there were a couple of seasons where Michael Thomas beat him as far as receiving yards. So you taking all that into consideration, I don't feel like with a shortened career, because most likely it's a wrap. He's not coming back to professional football, not even the XFL. That being said, I absolutely 1000% do not feel like his numbers were impressive enough for him to even be considered for the Hall of Fame.
And yeah, you were talking about running backs. I think they have an easier path to get in for shorter careers because we know that their careers are shorter anyway. So even the 2 names I thought you were going to bring up weren't even Terrell Davis and Gale Sayers because, I've had this talk with one of my other Broncos friends. I don't think Terrell Davis belongs in the Hall of Fame. But that being said, I thought you were going to talk about Barry Sanders and Jim Brown both getting in, which they should have. The 2 people that I have not an issue with, I did bring it up just to throw a hot take out there on Twitter when he retired. But the 2 people that I would worry about that they're both definitely going to get in, and they probably should, are when you're talking about short careers, are Gronkowski and Calvin Johnson.
And in those cases, I agree, because look at what they were able to do with their career in those short spans. In particular, what Rob Gronkowski was able to do at the tight end position, he still holds record. Not just, New England Patriot records, but he holds records for like tight ends. Not all of them, obviously, Tony Gonzalez holds some or whatever, but he was able to break certain records and things of that nature, like touchdowns in a season and things like that. He had a hell of a career, and he was able to win multiple Super Bowls, which Tony Gonzalez wasn't able to do. So yeah, in those those cases, those are two very good examples of people that absolutely deserve to go in. AB is nowhere near that level, and no, shouldn't even be considered. And I don't actually believe he will be. In particular, the way he's been, flame on and burning the bridge with the NFL of late.
Yep, and the thing with Gronkowski too, which a lot of people don't realize, even with players like Hines Ward's, he wasn't a great receiver, but he can block his ass off. He always could, Gronkowski. That same with George Kittle now and Travis Kelce. They're like the two best blocking tight ends in the league, and that makes them the two of the best tight ends in the league, and they're going to go in the Hall of Fame also if they keep up at this pace. But Gronkowski, when it comes to Tony Gonzalez, yes, he's going to get in, and he has all the all-time records, where Gronkowski has the season records. But Tony Gonzalez blocked worse than Deion Sanders tackled. And, that's pretty friggin' bad, where Gronkowski would maul you like he was an all-pro left tackle.
Bingo. And that's why he deserves it. AB has done none of those things. AB was always very selfish. It has been, it is amazing. I don't think Tomlin gets the credit he deserves for being able to keep everything, all the drama and everything that was going on there in Pittsburgh under wraps for as long as he was. And particularly when you see the way AB has fallen apart since he left Pittsburgh. So that kind of tells me that there was a lot that Tomlin was able to hold together, probably with bubble gum and duct tape, to hold that team together for as long as he was able to do so. So hell, at the end of his career, maybe Tomlin deserves to go in just for the magic that he was able to pull off and keeping that team together for the way that he was able to do.
Yeah, there was a tweet, I think about a month ago, that I saw that said, can we retroactively go back and give Tomlin the Coach of the Year award for every year that he was there with Antonio Brown?
1000% agree with that. Goodness gracious. Well, you guys, I know Phillip Rivers hasn't officially said that he's going to retire, but the Chargers have said they are officially done with Phillip Rivers. I know we talked about him before, Dominic, but now that the Chargers have finally come out and said that that's it, they're done with him, where does Phillip Rivers end up going next year? Or does Phillip Rivers just say, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and retire. I got nothing left to prove?
I think he's going to play again. I don't know where it's going to be, but he already made the first move of retirement, which everybody does, and he moved to Florida, so he's already on the right track. That being said, I can actually see him ending up in Tampa Bay if they decide not to franchise Jameis Winston, which I don't think they should because he's not a great quarterback. I think Phillip Rivers is an upgrade on Jameis Winston, and with that offense that they have there, with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, O.J. Howard, and even Cameron Brate, they have to get a running game going there, but even with the weapons they have there and the decent to solid offensive line, I think he could really do good things there and at least put up stats for another couple of years and maybe take him to the playoffs and make him relevant for at least a year or two.
You know what? I would love to see Phillip Rivers end up somewhere else next season. And like you said, Tampa Bay might be a really good fit for him because they 1000% should not franchise tag Jameis Winston. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't feel like they should franchise tag him. I don't know what kind of offer they will give him. I don't know that they'll keep him there. I don't feel like Bruce Arians was impressed by what he saw over the season. Come on now, you threw 30 interceptions. That's unbelievable for a quarterback to do in a season. And admittedly, people say, oh, well, it balances out because he threw for over 5,000 yards. So freaking what? He threw 30 interceptions. He cost his team multiple games. I don't feel like he's the long-term answer for that team. Now, again, Phillip Rivers isn't necessarily the long-term answer. The man is getting up there in age. So he could be the short-term answer if let's say they keep signing for a year. Or let's say they sign to a 2-year deal with the thought that they'll bring in, a rookie. They'll draft a rookie and have him coach him up for the next 2 years. I feel like that would be a better decision than for them to continue to hang on to Jameis the way they are. Another good spot, again, would be potentially, again, I know I've said it before, is with the Colts, because we have learning, as much as it hurts me, that Jacoby Brissett is not going to be the answer there. And again, that's going to be another team that's going to have to draft a quarterback. Phillip Rivers in there, being able to coach up a little young rookie would be good. I mean, he could pass on some of his knowledge, some of what he knows, and maybe even some of that brashness and arrogance that he has on the field, which has helped him over the years. I feel like that might be the best decision. I hope he doesn't retire. I'd like to see him do at least another year, potentially 2. And those are probably the best fits. It would be good. I know he's a Southern boy, maybe to the Titans, but I feel like the Titans have a good thing there with Tannehill, and it wouldn't make sense for them to bring in another older, quarterback even older than the quarterback they have. It makes sense for them to bring in another quarterback, but I can see them going the route of drafting one as opposed, because they're going to get rid of Mariota. That's for sure. That's a definite. Mariota's gone. See you. Bye-bye. But I don't see them bringing in someone like Phillip Rivers, even though I know he would love to go to Tennessee. I don't see that happening because I really know that Tennessee is happy with what they have there in Tannehill. So we'll see. I want to see what he decides. I'm hoping that he sticks around, and I hope he lands in a good spot where he can last for at least, like I said, another year, maybe two, and coach up some rookie and get them up to speed before he, walks off into the sunset somewhere down south.
Yeah, and the one that, I brought up before the show started is, my team. And I know they really like Taysom Hill there. There's actually talk now that they want to re-sign Taysom Hill and let Teddy Bridgewater go. But Drew Brees has said that he's going to make an announcement in the next month whether he's going to retire or not. If he does retire, if he went to New Orleans, I think that he could make magic with Sean Payton for the next couple of years. No offense to Austin Eckler this year or Melvin Gordon or even, Keenan Allen. But if he went there behind the offensive line there, that's probably one of the top three in the league with Michael Thomas, who's the best receiver in the league right now, Alvin Kamara, who's the top 5 running back, and even Latavius Murray there, as well as Jared Cook. We know how much he likes using the tight end, and Jared Cook has had a resurgence the past couple of years. That would be, and the decent defense they have there, top 10 to 12 defense. That would be the most talented, best team that he's ever been on since he was there with LaTavian Tomlinson, and even then they didn't have any wide receivers at that point.
And I think that might be a good fit, but we'll see because it's all dependent upon what Drew Brees decides to do and what New Orleans decides to do if he makes that decision. Again, like you said, they may keep Taysom Hill there and dump Teddy Bridgewater. It may be considering that, if Drew Brees retires, that they may know that they still need 2 quarterbacks, that they may keep both of them. We'll see what happens there. I know that Teddy put out an Instagram that made it clear that how much he really, really loves New Orleans and the second chance that they gave him. I feel like it was a message to the team saying, hey, thank you for giving me another shot. And I would really love to stay here and still be with you guys. Now, whether putting that message out there is something that the Saints will reply to and be like, you know what? He's shown such commitment and such love for this city and for this team. We should hang on to him. I don't know that it'll work out, but I know that he put it out there that he loves that team and would like to stay there again another year in New Orleans. So let's see what happens. But for sure, I know it would be nice if Phillip could go there, but I don't think that's a realistic one at all.
No, I don't think so either. It's just fun to think of it. Maybe they should franchise him in LA, and then New England can franchise Tom Brady, and then they can just trade him.
Hey, there's an idea. Don't see that happening either, but that would be a good flip for both of them. Well, the Browns, after hiring a head coach, a couple weeks ago, finally decided to hire a GM. I wasn't sure that they were even going to hire one this offseason, if they're going to try and go through a whole season without one. But no, they decided to go ahead and pull the trigger, and they hired Andrew Berry. Andrew Berry, who spent last season with the Eagles as their vice president of football operations, and who previously was with the Browns for 3 seasons when Sasha Brown was there. So that being said, goodness gracious. Dominic, what impact will Andrew Berry have? Will he be able to fit into that coaching system that this analytics system that they're going to try and have there in Cleveland?
Unfortunately, he is, because that's all he's about is the analytics. They've even said that even though he didn't make the picks when he was there before, with Sasha Brown that actually made him, he's the one that looked at him. He is all about analytics. He's one of this new breed of guys that I was listening to a podcast earlier, and they were saying that he's one of these guys, because I was listening to the Michael Lombardi podcast, and he was actually there with them for a year or so, and he said that he's one of these guys that's going to see a guy play on the field, look at stats of a guy, look at the analytics of a guy, and decide that the analytics are, more important than what he actually sees on the field, and go with the analytics. That's unfortunate because they need to get away from that. They already had that in Paul DePodesta. I think this is totally just to keep DePodesta as basically the GM, where even though he has Andrew Berry has the title of GM, he's not actually going to have the authority of the GM. It's going to be DePodesta, whatever he wants to do, and he's just going to be his lackey for it. It's all about analytics. And I do agree as well that Stefanski's 37 years old. He's good. He's a young head coach. This guy's actually the youngest general manager in the league now. He's only 32 years of age. So he's even 5 years younger than Stefanski. And when you have a young coach like that, you have to have a GM with some authority. And he doesn't have that. He's not going to have the street cred, if you want to call it that, or anything. I think he's a patsy. And until they get this whole thing figured out, they're going to, like we talked about before, I think as much as I want Stefanski to be successful there, I don't think it's going to happen. He'll be gone in 2-3 years. DePodesta will hopefully be gone in 2 years. When the whole thing they need to do is figure out a way to get Haslam the hell out of there. And obviously he's the owner, so they can't do that. So I just think as long as Haslam owns this team, it's just going to be a total total shit show, just like it is with, in Cincinnati with the Browns owning the team and all that kind of stuff. It's just until they get rid of the ownership structure there, then this team's just bound to be bad.
Sadly, I 1000% agree with you again. Andrew Berry is going to end up being the fall guy, just like Sashi Brown was when Sashi was there, just like John Dorsey has been. There's no way around it. This is not a good team. It comes all the way from the top down at ownership. DePodesta is, basically they want DePodesta to lead this quote unquote analytics style team or whatever. And I know that's why that they brought in Andrew Berry, this Harvard educated, GM and everything. They went the whole Ivy League route, with the GM and the coach and all in the whole situation there. Kudos or whatever, and they got these super smart, educated analytics people that are going to be able to turn the team around. No, they're not. It's the damn Browns, okay? It's going to fall into the same tragic mistakes because at the end of the day, it's still the Haslams that own the team, and they still are going to be the ones that make the final decisions and pull the trigger, and they're going to make the wrong ones because they always do. Do I think that that's a bad reflection on Andrew Berry for taking the job? Absolutely not. This was smart on his part. You get an opportunity to be a GM, and that's perfect, and I appreciate that, and this makes the second African-American GM in the league right now behind Chris Greer over there in the Dolphins. So I'm, of course, ecstatic about that situation. I just don't feel like it's going to be a good situation because, as to quote you, the Browns are a shit show. And so it's not going to work out. In 2 years, Andrew Berry's going to be out, just like Sashi Brown was out, just like John Dorsey was out. I don't think trying to now switch and say they're going to be an analytic style team is going to make them any better than what they've been over the last few years, and especially everybody's got has to have a hand in decisions on, how players are going to be called and things like that. Too many cooks spoil the soup. I think that this is not going to be a situation that's going to work out, but I wish Andrew Berry the best of luck. I'm not saying that it has anything to do with him. It just has to do with who the team is. I hope that when his time is done there in Cleveland, that he does get another opportunity in the league. I hope he becomes a GM for a better team than the Cleveland Browns. That's how I feel it.
Yeah, I'm going to change this quote so it's less racially insensitive. But they have too many leaders and not enough followers there, and that's the issue. Is they think that because this guy went to college, just like if you take it back to military, people think that the lieutenant is a higher grade than the sergeant, so he's going to be better. He's going to do this. No, he's a higher rank because he went to officer school, and you automatically start as lieutenant. That's why most of the guys in the military will fight their heart and soul and their blood, let out their blood and guts for the sergeant who never went to this military school. He got up to his rank by working his way up there, working his ass off, and being out there in the field work with guys, whereas the lieutenant went to officer school, or in this case, went to Harvard or got their college degree and stuff. And I'd rather work for the guy that worked his ass off and got up there, and that's the guys that the military has more respect for, and that's what they needed in here was to pick a GM who has the respect. Even John Dorsey would have been better keeping him there because at least he has the respect from around the league and stuff where they don't know what Andrew Berry's going to be. So I'd rather, like I said, have that. Rather have a team full of sergeants than have a team full of lieutenants.
Agree with you 1000%. So let's see what happens here. I wish Andrew Berry luck. I hope that when this whole situation blows up in Cleveland, that everyone gets another shot somewhere else with a better team, including Andrew Berry. I hope he gets a shot being a GM for a much better team.
Everybody except Jimmy Haslam.
Thank you. And I would love to see him go, but hey, ownership is a totally different animal. Well, and one of the surprising coaching hires, I want to say, it was the fact that the Giants decided to hire Jason Garrett. I think it's a good fit. I think it was a good decision. But again, Dominic, what kind of impact? What do you think that Jason Garrett is going to be able to bring to the Giants? And will he be able to, be a better OC there in New York and, coach up this team with some of the Dallas thinking?
Yeah, I don't know if it's even the Dallas thinking, because I don't think he did much thinking in Dallas. It was all Jerry Jones telling him what to do. But when he was the offensive coordinator there, he was a good offensive coordinator. I think that some people are, as we talked about before with other people, he's a better coordinator than he is a head coach, much like, Rex Ryan was a much better defense coordinator than he ever was a head coach. And I think he wants to show that he can do that again, that he can really lead a team. Obviously, I think he's trying to use this as a platform to get the head coaching job again. I don't know if he's going to get one or not. He'll probably get a chance because he has been a head coach for 10 years in the league or 9 years. But I do think that he's going to do a good job here. They still have weapons there. They have Darius Slayton. They have obviously Saquon Barkley. If Daniel Jones ends up doing something, they have Golden Tate there. If Evan Ingram comes back healthy this year, I think him and another offense coordinator that was just hired, obviously Jay Gruden down in Jacksonville, I think they're both doing just this to try and use it as a platform to show that they really can get back into the league, and they're trying to use it as a springboard to get back up into a head coaching position. I don't know if he's hoping that if he stays there for 3 or 4 years that Joe Judge is going to suddenly get fired again and then he'll be able to get the head job there. That may happen, but I just think that no matter what, he's using this as a springboard and a platform to try and get to another job. But I do think that while he's there, he should do a good job. Obviously, he can't do any worse than the Giants did last year. They were in the low 20s in the league in offense. I do think they're going to get back into the top half of the league in offense this year.
I think the Giants making the decision to hire Jason Garrett as the OC is a really smart move on their part, because he can bring over some of that, play calling and playbook that they had over there in Dallas. And like, hey, this is some of the offensive schemes that we ran. This is some of the ideas that we went with. Maybe, possibly, he can help, coach up Danny Dimes so that he can play on a level of a Dak. I'm not saying that he has the same capability or skill. I'm just saying that, maybe with the right head coach there, Danny Dimes could do a little better and the Giants could be competitive again. And I think that comes from having a good OC there and seeing, again, Joe Judge is going to be a wait and see type project. We don't know what he is going to do long term because we haven't seen him at the head coach level in the pros. And so I want to see what Judge is going to do. But having Jason Garrett there is a very smart move on their part. And like you said, I do believe Jason Garrett is going to use this as an opportunity to show what he can do and that he is worthy of getting another shot at being a head coach, because all of what was going on there in Dallas didn't all fall on him. Again, that has to do with a very controlling owner. If you get a good owner that's willing to, allow you to make, more hiring decisions, more coaching decisions, who isn't also your general manager, and you get a little more say on what happens in the players that you bring in there, then you can have more success. So I feel like Jason Garrett will be able to have more success. And if he shows that he can be successful out from under Jerry Jones' influence, and he's able to coach up someone like Danny Dimes to make him more an efficient quarterback and be able to coach up Saquon and get him to an even higher level, I feel like that he will be able to use this to springboard to, to a head coaching job. Will it be the one there in New York? If Joe Judge doesn't work out, we'll see. But I definitely know that this was a smart move. I think he'll be able to coach this team in a way that will see them have more success next season. Again, going to the Jay Gruden one, that's another situation where I feel like Jacksonville bringing in Jay Gruden was very smart. And I think that will give Jay the opportunity to see that, again, this all has to do with owners. He was in a situation in Washington with a terrible owner, and Dan Snyder's probably one of the worst owners in the NFL. And I know that's saying something considering the Haslams, but he's a terrible ass owner too. And he's been at it longer. He's been terrible for much longer than the Haslams have been terrible. And he hasn't gotten better. He hasn't learned his lesson. He actually seems to be getting worse every single year. So Jay Gruden getting an opportunity to be somewhere else, being under the cons, maybe he'll get an opportunity to prove himself again and get another shot at a head coaching job. And it's possible, considering that Doug Marrone is on thin ice, that it might be the Jacksonville head coaching job. We'll see. These are two head coaches that were in bad situations with owners that are too controlling, and I feel like they are now going to be in better situations with better ownership, and they will get an opportunity to really prove themselves. Here is their chances to prove that it was just that they were under some bad ownership with people that were too controlling, and now with better teams, they'll get a better opportunity to show that they really are great coaches, and hopefully that will propel them in, like, say, a year, maybe 2 years, to get a shot again to become head coaches somewhere else in the league. And the last topic I want to talk about is Bill O'Brien. Good Lord. The Texans, do I want to say they promoted him or he kind of promoted himself? Bill O'Brien has now the general manager for the Texans. Dominic, do you think this is going to work out in the Texans' favor?
No, just like we were talking about beforehand about that, that movie Horrible Bosses. This is like Kevin Spacey saying, I decided to promote myself for this position. That way now I'm going to be the head coach and the GM, and I'm only going to take half the salary of the GM to save the team money. And that's kind of what it is here. I think it's good that they brought that, I think his name's Luke Easterly or something like that, the passer down from, the Patriots. I think it's going to be good because they're going to need a lot of hopes and prayers to be able to have this one help them.
First of all, before the season started, I put out a list of 5 coaches that I thought were on the hot seat for this season. And on my list, tops on my list was Bill O'Brien. And now, admittedly, the Texans ended up having a better season than I predicted that they would. They had a healthy Deshaun Watson, and they were able to do a little more this season. And I put that on the team more than I put that on Bill O'Brien's coaching. The fact that he has now decided that he should also be the general manager, I do not think this is going to work out in the Texans' favor, because that means that he's now going to have more decisions on who they draft, what free agents they bring in. We've seen teams where, I'm not saying that there aren't teams where that isn't successful, because people will bring up, well, what about Bill Belichick? Bill Belichick does that with the Patriots. It's the Patriots, though, people. You talk about the difference of the Patriots and the Texans. Come on, now you're also talking about the difference of Belichick and Bill O'Brien, who hasn't always been successful, who hasn't always had good seasons, who's had some atrocious seasons there with Houston. I don't think that this is going to work out for the Texans. I don't think this was a smart move. I feel like they should have had a separate GM in there. I think there was GMs they had there that I understand why Rick Smith parted ways with the team, take care of his wife. I feel like they should bring in someone of Rick Smith's quality back there as the general manager. I don't know why they're making this move. I don't feel like it's going to work out in their favor. And I expect, in another year, maybe 2, Bill O'Brien will be out. And that's just my feeling on the whole situation, both as the head coach and as the general manager, because this isn't the move. This isn't smart on their part. And I don't feel like the team is going to improve in any way. I don't feel like he's going to make better free agency moves. He isn't going to draft better quality players. He's going to continue to be what he's been, which is a mediocre coach. And add that to, as the general manager, he's going to be a mediocre general manager. And the team is going to continue to struggle. They'll get a win here and a win there. Maybe they'll make it back into the playoffs, but they're never going to get past the first round of the playoffs, because they're just not that good of a team with Bill O'Brien as a head coach, and in particular now as the head coach and general manager.
Matt Millen would be a better general manager than Bill O'Brien.
Which is sad to say. Oh, my goodness. When you have to say that, that just really kind of tells you how terrible we both think that this decision is on their part. Well, you guys, that's all the time that we have for today. I want to thank you all again for listening. I hope you guys all enjoyed the Super Bowl as much as the two of us are going to. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at TheNFLGirl320. Dominic, where can they follow you?
You can follow me at EnvisionFF.
You can read more of my thoughts on SheKnowsProFootball.com. Dominic, where can they read your work?
You can read my work at FantasyHotRead.com, as well as Rotoballer.com and Razzball.com. And before we go, I'd just like to say, all my, best wishes to the Bryant family and all the other families that were in the helicopter. When I was in high school, Kobe Bryant was in high school. We grew up in the same area, just 2 school districts away. And he was actually drafted when I was a sophomore in high school. So I pretty much watched his career, and I was not his, biggest fan as a player, but you can't, he definitely had the dedication. He had the hard work. He did everything right on the court for the dedication, everything that you want young players to do and young people to do. And the fact everything he was doing after his career was amazing. And it's just sad to see it's tragic to see somebody go so young, and especially his daughter and all the other people that went with him as well.
Kobe Bryant, I really believe, was on the verge of changing the world. I grew up in the era of Jordan and Kobe more than I did LeBron. And don't get me wrong, I appreciate LeBron's career and what he has been able to do since he has come into the game. But I really grew up in the era of MJ and Kobe. And to see what he was able to do on the court as a player when he entered was so young and so brash and kind of cocky, and then mellowed out over the years and won championships. And then what he was able to do off the court, and his, philanthropy and everything that he was trying to do just as a human being, and what he did as a father, and how good he was with his 4 daughters, the impact that Gigi was most likely going to have. She most likely would have gone on to carry on the legacy and been a legend herself, and, probably won titles with the LA Sparks, and carried on the Bryant name. It's sad to see 9 people lose their lives, and it was very heartbreaking this week. I live in Los Angeles. I can tell you that the entire city is in mourning, and I wish all of those families, you have all my thoughts and prayers, and I hope that everyone understands that tomorrow isn't promised, so live your best life you can today.
Yeah, and just a quick story to show how much dedication he had and that everybody needs to have for anything that they want to do in life, not just sports, but anything, is for the Olympic trials one time, there was a story that I heard on a podcast that he flew in, he got there at 3 o'clock in the morning, and he called his trainer who was asleep and said, I need you to come down, I need to work out. And he said, all right. So they went down to the gym and they worked out until 8 o'clock, and then his trainer went back up to the room to get some sleep because they had a Team USA practice at 1 o'clock, and he came back down at 12:30 in the afternoon to get ready for practice, and Kobe Bryant was still there practicing and he said, oh, did you just get here? He said, no, I'm just finishing up my practice, getting ready for the one that starts at 1 o'clock.
And that's the type of dedication, love, and passion that he had for the game. This man once shot 2 free throws on a blown Achilles. I can't imagine the pain that the man was in at the time that he did that, but that's the type of player that he was. And the way that he was teaching Gigi to play, that's the type of coach that he was. That's the type of impact he was going to have on the world. And he is going to be sorely missed, as is all 9 of those people who lost their lives. And so I wish, like I said, I wish everyone nothing but love and joy, and hope that you take the lessons that the Mamba tried to teach to us and share that with the world. Never give up on your dreams and keep fighting every day that you live.
Don't forget, tell somebody you love them.
And tell someone you love them every day and every chance that you get. Well, you guys, that's all the time we have. See you guys back here next week.